Not all bulldogs have breathing problems. So there are unhealthy dogs of every breed.
A large
No,
percentage.
that's not correct. There are unhealthy dogs of any breed, and there are healthy dogs of every breed. So there are very many healthy bulldogs. I think depending upon the colleagues of mine that you're talking to, if you're talking to a surgeon, they're going to see mainly those dogs presenting that may need corrective surgery. They're not seeing the dogs that are being selected for the next level of responsible breeders. So I think it's the perspective of the veterinarian. You're now talking to a veterinarian who works with those responsible breeders. These are people who are working to produce the healthiest dogs possible, and they're working with us to make sure that that happens. I see mainly the bulldogs that are out in the ring, that are out there as a theriogenologist, specializing in reproduction and obstetrics, and also with special training in genetics. I see a lot of those bulldogs that are the healthy dogs that breeders are doing everything that they possibly can, including a multitude of screening tests, before that dog even considered being entered into a breeding program. So I'm not seeing those dogs. If they have a breathing problem, that responsible breeder is removing that dog from their breeding program, spaying and neutering that animal.
So let's be clear. That's what our challenge is here as the American Kennel Club. We need to educate, we need to eliminate bad breeders. We need to educate uninformed breeders, but we also need to commend the good breeders, the breeders that are bettering for their breed. Well, we take the standard as the blueprint. You know, if you liken it to building a house, you have the standard as the blueprint, and then you'll have the builder or the breeder who has to follow the standard. So where we see the best chance for people having happy, healthy dogs is really when they work with a vet like Cindy, when they work with the breed clubs who can provide information, the American Kennel Club who can provide education. They follow that path, stick to the standard. That's when we see that's the chances we see for happy, healthy dogs. No, but the breed standard is the blueprint. We believe that the breed standard doesn't need to be changed, because when the breed standard is followed, we have happy, healthy dogs. You know, when a good breeder works with a vet and works and follows the health screenings that are recommended, that gives us the best chance for happy, healthy dogs. It's not the standard that's flawed.
The breed standard for bulldogs says this: massive, short-faced head, a heavy, thick-set, low-swung body, a very short face and muzzle, a massive and undershot jaw. And you can see, I mean, if you use the bulldog as an example, right? The tiny little nose of the bulldog, getting smaller and smaller.
Well, I would disagree with that point from my perspective as a veterinarian. From my knowledge of bulldogs, that standard hasn't changed in over 100 years. And so for the most part, there are...
As I'm reading it, or
correct.
How a bulldog that we see at Westminster today compares to a bulldog 100 years ago?
Both. Those responsible breeders are actually breeding healthy dogs. There are few that are going to breed to extremes, which certainly as a veterinarian and certainly members of the AKC and responsible breeders are not going to condone any activity that produces unhealthy dogs. You will occasionally, like I mentioned, find people who are pushing the norms, but those aren't the responsible breeders that are breeding the good, healthy bulldogs that I see in my practice.
We have photographic evidence that shows that these dogs that look the same 100 years ago. We can supply that to you, that the dogs that are winning week in, week out are healthy, happy bulldogs. And they look the same as they did 100 years ago, because these are breeders that are following the breed standard. That won't happen because judges are educated not to reward exaggerations. Exaggerations is one of the things we come down very hard on our breeders for, that they should never breed for exaggeration. The same way that they should never have unhealthy dogs in their programs. If a breeder has a dog that has an issue, they take that dog out of the program because they're there to better the breed and better the health of the dog. That's the reason that breeders that are involved with the American Kennel Club are breeding happier, healthier dogs than they ever have been, because they're listening to the education, they're working with their vets, they're participating in programs like the Canine Health Foundation, and they're bettering that breed. That's the challenge we face in America. How can we get to more of these breeders? How can we educate them? How can we eliminate the bad breeders? That's the focus, and that's what we want to do.
I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is that there's a tremendous number, I mentioned previously, over 100 genetic tests and a wide variety of other pre-breeding health screening that can be performed. And I think as we get into some of the complexities of this and the complexities of genetics, it makes it much more important for breeders to be discussing those things with their veterinarian. Not every dog that enters the ring ends up entering into a breeding program. I think it really needs to be a communal effort with that particular breeder and their veterinarian as to what are appropriate screens so that we can optimize our chances of producing healthy dogs.
Well, because we want to focus our time and effort in making all dogs healthy and having screens for all dogs. The dogs in the show ring predominantly are healthy because if you follow that breed standard, that gives you the guide of what a dog should be like in both structure, temperament, and how the dog should move, and it should all flow together. So those dogs are healthy. We would rather focus on making sure all dogs are healthy. Let's work on working with vets on screening all dogs and educating breeders to have better breed programs. That's the focus.
We don't see that inline breeding, as you would call it, is going to necessarily produce disease. In some cases you can, in some cases you can't. It really depends on how the genetics are working through. And that's where it's very, very important for breeders to understand that they need to work with a veterinary genetic counselor to help them with some of those decisions so that we can reduce disease. So thanks to organizations like the AKC Canine Health Foundation, where they are raising that money mainly from responsible breeders and owners and putting that into research, and then the dedication of those breeders, their veterinarians and the researchers, we now have over 100 genetic tests that we can help prevent disease in dogs. And we've also seen the development of other testing organizations like the Orthopedic Foundation for Animals and their Canine Health Information Center, which actually collaborates with the AKC to try and help prevent and help promote pre-breeding health screening. So because of all of that, we've seen significant decreases in health problems in purpose-bred dogs, which is great.